Bomb Squad Radio Massive, Black Ice Chronicles Massive. I'm standing here with Yusef Salaam, known for the Central Park 5 case, unfortunately, but also fortunately for the outcome and the future that he has paid for himself. So first of all, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Very, very well.
Blessed.
Yes, very blessed, very well. I am extremely happy to be here, happy to be on your show, and to share a few words with your audience.
Okay. My first question: how can our young children, 10 to 17 years old, and young men 18 to 25 protect themselves when they're walking on the streets
Ooh,
from what you went through, which was wrongful incarceration and imprisonment?
yeah, that's a difficult one. I've never been asked that one. you know, um, I think one of the things that unfortunately assists us are things like whistling Dixie, and I say that in a almost shameful way. You know what I'm saying? Because we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to be in a position where we have to make people feel comfortable that we're walking down the block or that we are in the space that they're in, you know. Um, but then the other thing too is to make sure that, and I've just always been this way personally, knowing that people always say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but everybody is judging us by what they see. And so it's not that I want to wear, say, suits and ties all day or anything like that, but I do feel great when I'm wearing a suit and a tie. I do feel important, and I notice a lot of times that I'm treated differently when I'm wearing things that are looking like I'm an important person. You know, the problem is our young people shouldn't be subjected to having to throw a suit and a tie on just to appease folks. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard to answer that because it's like that the duality of we know this is a reality that's going on right now in the streets. People are being targeted. People are being just the whole 9 yards. In many ways, snatched up, railroaded into a prison industrial complex system, and there you go, becoming the new modern day slave.
Okay, the reason why I asked that question is more as far as the person protecting themselves, not outward appearance, because I realize that as human beings, we should be able to dress like we like to dress, right? Because even in the 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s, when the zoot suits were out and the men were dressed in three-piece suits, the police would drive up to the corners, and it would be a scatter mode, still the same, even though they were dressed to the nines, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how we're dressed. What I'm saying is, how do how do we get our youth and our young men to be aware that they're hunted, and thus be aware of surroundings, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more for us, not for our outward appearance to someone else.
Yeah, I got you on that because as you begin to talk about that in terms of being not having to be regulated into wearing whatever it is that the society wants us to wear, we should be able to define for us ourselves what we want for ourselves. I remember that campaign that was out not too long ago where the RZA had said something kind of similar, where hey man, people should be dressing differently in order to do this and that, and all of a sudden there was this huge tell RZA this person was wearing a suit campaign that was going on. Of course, you had the Sanctuary, Without Sanctuary, the book that showed clearly countless number of black people in this country, Africans in this country, America, being lynched, being strung up on trees, and having their lives taken away from them, and they were dressed in suits. You know.
Or in army or military
Yes.
uniform.
Yes. Yes. We can't forget that. People coming home from the service, coming home from a tour, not even getting home yet, and being lynched. And that stuff happened in this country. Still happening in this country. But the thing about it too, I think what I'm looking at is the mindset, and part of the mindset comes from us educating our children about history and historical things that have happened. Sometimes people look at people like Emmett Till, and they don't make the connection until a Tamir Rice happens. You see, and so for us, it's on not just the parents, but also people who care, to be able to take these kind of historical things that have gone on and to bring it into today's reality so that our young people have a fighting chance. I'm gonna tell you, man, I found out that you couldn't search my car through a Jay-Z song. So legally, I didn't even know that until I heard Jay-Z say that. And I said, "What is that for real?" And they said, "Yeah, they need a warrant to search your car." I've been in situations where they searched my car without a warrant, not knowing, you know? And so that's the other side of it, being able to have that educational piece come to play, but also being wise enough in ourselves to be able to know that we need to be on point. And it's unfortunate that we have to live in that reality because I'm reminded of when I was in prison, I had to constantly be on point. Somebody the other day said it's almost like the description that I gave them was similar to the description that she had heard of a person who was in actual war. That to not be on point meant that you was gonna lose your life in a minute. You had to constantly be on edge, be on point, be aware of your surroundings, and that's not fair because the age group that we're talking about is an age group that people shouldn't be. They shouldn't have their youth, the innocence of their youth taken from them. But of course, we see overwhelmingly all throughout the television and all throughout social media all of these atrocities that go on and continue to go on.
So, because I'm always concerned, we're going to switch gears, but I just wanted to say this. I'm always concerned when I see 10 to 17-year-olds and 18 to 25-year-olds, myself coming through what I call those years 18 to 25 was like what you call the killing fields. And then once you get through that age group, then you're pretty much, if you keep yourself together, you're pretty much okay because you've went through it and you've seen your friends pass and you've seen different situations. So I'm always concerned about the youth walking as if there was no concern, like they're open free. Was that your experience as being a 14, 15-year old? That you felt okay, you didn't have any knowledge of what had happened in the past and you felt free to be walking around in the park that day instead of saying, maybe we should limit our time in the park and go someplace else. Not like that's unfair, but you weren't thinking. You were pretty much saying, "I'm free. I can do what I like." Give the people, the youth, that perspective, so they'll know, so they'll click on and say, maybe I should become aware."
Yeah, absolutely. I got to be very honest about that. I wasn't. I was, even though my mother had been teaching me the stories of her youth and what she went through, she would always say that she was from the Jim Crow South. And me being in New York and being raised in New York, we didn't see that reality. The reality that we saw was that we had officers walking around the streets and in the neighborhoods and things like that, and they knew the names of the people that they were supposed to be there to protect and serve, right? Not the ones who now, when we look on the side of cop cars in New York City and it says courtesy, professionalism, and respect. But if you happen to be living in Staten Island, just like we saw, they got their hands around that man's neck and he's saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." They didn't even give him the first letters of those words. They didn't give him CPR, you know? And so there's this thing that we need to understand, that we are being targeted. Nobody has scripted for themselves that they want to be dead or in jail before we reach the age of 21. Yet black and brown folks, that is what we know. That's what we've heard, that this is our reality. And so we need to be a little bit wiser about what's going on. Like I completely, when I was 15 and this case happened to me, I said to myself, thinking that I was old enough, and by old enough I mean being an adult, right? I'm 15 years old thinking that I'm an adult and I'm grown, going completely against what my mother had told me. I thought that it was okay for me to go to the cops, tell them what I saw, and I was going to be home before my mom got back. And I say that because I didn't come home until 7 years passed. Corey Wise was with me. He wasn't even a suspect. He didn't come home until 13 years had passed. They said to him real simply, "Hey, you want to go downtown with your buddy? You'll be right back." And so when we look at those things, my story and other stories like my story are very, very clear examples that you can't walk around thinking it can't happen to you, because it's already happened to many others. So we have to walk around with the reality that it's unfair and it's not right. Part of it is, what can I do? because the part of what can I do means that folks like myself and folks who are younger than me, somebody said to me the other day that their dad and he taught him in such a way where the son said, man, dad, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And the father instilled in the young person, he said, well, why do you have to wait till you grow up? You can do these things and more, meaning that his father was showing him a great example of being a father, a great example of being a responsible person. And so that idea of being able to look at your youth and know that you don't have to wait until you become a grown person to say, you know what, I feel like I should organize. I feel like I should, find out what this justice system is all about. Maybe I should go into the system by going into the courthouses and just sit there, because that's an education, being able to see what it is that young people go through. Don't just say, well, it's never going to happen to me. But at least when you get this kind of education firsthand, you get the ability to be equipped in a way that will allow you to survive tomorrow.
You're speaking of organization, and Kwame Nkrumah said that we have a problem as far as knowing the difference between mobilization and organization. That people will come out and do something, chant, 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 but when it's time for organization, and I hear you speaking on organization as far as not only do people come to rallies, but also they turn around and then when you need them to, someone is imprisoned and you need them to jam those phone lines, you can get 5 to 10,000 people to do that. That's mobilization. So how do we go about mobilizing our people so that situations like your situation will never happen again?
Well, see, part of it is knowing that if we look at mobilization from the perspective of playing checkers, and we look at organization from the perspective of playing chess, we got to understand these folks is playing chess. We come out and we say, you know what, let's have a 5 year plan. Let's have a 1 year plan. Let's have a plan for the week. Some of us don't even do that, right? And I try to teach my children that we need to begin to build like that. But the reality is that we're dealing with a group of people who don't think 5, 10, 15 year plans. They're thinking, what's my 100 year plan? What's my plan for my family? They're thinking about generational plans. And that's the type of thing that we need to look at. We need to be able to say to ourselves, you know what? When it comes down to it, if we are planning to survive, like a lot of young people right now, they coined this term a few years back, YOLO. And that YOLO term was a very serious term. I saw it as very serious because it wasn't just the fact that we only live once, but in that term was the package of them also saying, because we only live once, let's live recklessly. Because we only live once, let's not save. Let's spend when we get it. And then we see that right now. So all of the songs that are being pumped out on the airwaves, on popular networks and popular stations, are telling people, spend that money. Be reckless. Be the second girlfriend. Be the second boyfriend. Nothing about the fabric of what it is that we are hearing is helping us to make this thing whole. It's causing us to become further unraveled, you know. And so part of the thing about organizing, I think, is that idea and understanding that it starts from home, because I truly feel like you have to save yourself first, and then you have to save your family, and then you have to save your community, and then you have to save your neighborhood, and then you have to save your state, your country, your city. It goes out like that. And if we can look at that as all of us, I come from a perspective where we were taught that if we look at every young woman, and I shouldn't say young woman, but I'm going to say young woman even for the women who may not necessarily be young, right? If we look at every young woman as our mother, our daughter, or our wife, if it's our wife, right? you know, we'll have a different kind of respect for that woman. And if we look at every man as our father, our brother, or our son, we'll have a completely different type of respect for that person. But that's who we are and where we come from, And so being able to organize like that, being able to look at your own family and say, you know what, if it was up to me, and I needed to be the fire starter of positivity, fire starter of making sure that whatever went on. I mean, we're about 50 years out of segregation, and so many of the information that we have, we're just coming into. You know what I'm saying? They already killed off the people in the Black Wall Streets and the Rosewoods and dropped the bomb on the move. You know what I'm saying? So all of these things have happened, and a lot of that history is getting lost on young people because there. It's not that I appreciate what my sister Angela Davis said because there's a truth in it, which she said that young people are growing up in a reality where we are a people who have a historical amnesia. And I want to go a step further and say that part of that reality is also that we're being taught that way. You see what I'm saying? It's like it's about the miseducation of the Negro, like Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, but it's also about the education of the Negro, like Dr. Carter G. Woodson said. So if we're being socialized and conditioned in such a way where the founding documents of this country is going to be alive and well because we're playing into it, and by that I mean the 13th Amendment, where it clearly states that they can take you as a punishment of a crime and turn you into a slave. Slavery is abolished except for the punishment of a crime, you know. They're talking about our ancestors. And a lot of young people that I've been in direct contact with, when you start talking about slavery and things like that, they're like, come on, man, that was so long ago. No, that was just yesterday.
Just yesterday.
You see, so that's the kind of reality that we need to be about and look at. This planning has to be a plan where we're not just planning for ourselves. Yes, we have to start with self, but then we have to move outside of self after we've mastered that to look at those around us, and then the outer circle of that, and then that outer circle, so that that circle can never be unbroken.
Okay, let's talk about the initiating event, the person who was raped in
Yes.
Central Park. It was lost in the story. I've never saw it. Did she ever recant, or did she stand up there and point you guys out? How did that go through? They just totally moved her out the way and just went along with the prosecution. Went forward with the prosecution. Excuse me.
They used her as a pawn in their game. And so even though they knew that we had not done this crime, and by saying even though they knew, I'm talking about they knew like they knew. Because this thing about forensic science is not a science that's like a maybe kind of thing. They can come into a space and tell by the splatter of blood what hand the assailant used to do whatever it was that they did. So when they recreated the crime scene, they had already known what happened to the Central Park jogger. They knew where she got struck first. They knew that she had been drug off into the woods. They knew all of this stuff that we found out later. 4 out of 5 of us made false confessions. Not one of those confessions that were found to be false matched anything else that anyone else was saying. I was the only one that didn't make a false confession, written or visual. You know, but when we look at this stuff, these seasoned detectives that were there, that were interrogating us, that were trying to so-called do their jobs. No, they were doing some serious technology because what they were really doing was they were appeasing the public's fears and making them think, hey, we got the perpetrators. The crime scene didn't look like perpetrators. The crime scene looked like perpetrator. But it was more sexy for it to be 5 or more individuals gang raping a white woman. And it's crazy because when you think about the historical facts in this case, you find that initially they didn't know she was white. And because they didn't know she was white, they thought she was a Latina woman. They took her past a prestigious hospital right outside of Central Park, Mount Sinai Hospital, and they passed that and went down to a so-called unprestigious hospital, Metropolitan Hospital. But unbeknownst to them, my aunt, man, I mean, God is amazing. Let me tell you something. My aunt had been in I want to say a managerial position. She created a document on how to save people's lives who have been victims of trauma. They used that document to save the Central Park jogger. Once she was in a stable position And they was like, listen, this is a white woman. They moved her quickly out of that hospital and placed her somewhere upstate so that she could further recover. You see. So fast, taking the story and moving it along, the Central Park jogger was made to believe that we had been the ones who had done this to her. 13 years later, the truth comes out. The real perpetrator of the crime talks about what he did and how he did it. All of his facts match. None of our facts match. Now this whole thing is beginning to come unraveled. And so what do? They say, you know what? Let's create a narrative that can fit. And the narrative was, this was the sixth man. This is what they said. And then they found out that this individual operated alone. So it wasn't the sixth man. Then they said, well, maybe he did it, and then we came along afterwards, and then we participated in it. They arrested some of the Central Park Five that night. Nobody had any DNA evidence on them. This lady lost 3/4 of her blood. This lady was said to have put up a fight. Raymond Santana, when he was being interrogated, was passed a photograph of Kevin Richardson. And in the photograph, Kevin Richardson had a scar on his face that was put there by the police officers who arrested him. And they lied to Raymond Santana and said, "This, you see that scar on his face? We know he did it. The jogger fought him and put that scar on his face." They checked underneath the jogger's fingernails. There was no skin fragments from Kevin Richardson underneath her fingernails. No blood on our clothes. No semen in this woman from us. No DNA at all. But they made the public believe we did it, and they made the Central Park jogger believe we had done this crime. 13 years later, the truth comes out. She now is on Oprah, and she's being, they're talking about this whole thing, and I'm not sure if the time frame is correct in terms of the Oprah thing, but she's there and she's being asked about, what about this new theory, right? And she's like, man, I don't know what to believe. See, what happened was the police officers became her friends. The DA's office became her friends. They told her that they had the real perpetrator of the crime. Our supporters kept saying, these individuals did not do this. As a matter of fact, even the people who were assaulted in Central Park did not pick any one of us out of a lineup. We had nothing to do with any of the stuff that happened aside from being in the park at the wrong time in the wrong place, And so the truth comes out 13 years later. She doesn't know what to believe. The real perpetrator is still left to continue to hurt and maim people, gets caught a few months later after he rapes and murders a young pregnant Latina woman while her children were in the next room.
Yeah, it's so sad.
This case is so horrific, not just from the perspective of what happened to her, but how this city of New York dropped the ball in the worst way. They could have had this perpetrator, but it was more sexy for it to be 5 people than for the truth to be the truth. And so to this day, she has never publicly, she never identified anyone as the person or persons who raped her. She has, what she said, total amnesia from that event. As a matter of fact, in her book, I Am the Central Park Jogger, I haven't read it myself, but what I've heard is that she describes the case rather as being a survivor of a brain injury, and she is, because after he raped her, he beat her in the head with a brick, because his motto was, after I do this to you, if you can say yes or no, I'm going to give you an option: your eyes or your life. This was his motto. If you go back and look at the interviews that Matias Reyes gave, the Central Park rapist, the real one who raped the Central Park jogger, the guy who was known as the East Side rapist and the East Side slasher, look back at those interviews and he said, I gave my victims an option. Either I cut their eyes out or I took their life. They choose. And of course, with the Central Park jogger, he had escalated, and all of his victims now was going to die. And so he beat her in the head with a rock, trying to kill her. You know. Mm.
Mm. So let's fast forward to today, in the future, and everything that you're doing. Speak a little to how you were able to remain the person that you were while you were incarcerated, and what was in your mind that kept you from being bitter.
Yes. So a lot of what helped me while I was in prison had a lot to do with spirituality. Me understanding who I was in the context of what was going on in this world, knowing and finding out that my name wasn't just a name that was happenstance giving to me. It was something that in the Islamic culture and faith, we don't have baby showers in Islam. We have baby naming ceremonies after the child is born. And so the good thing about that is that after this child is born, the people come together 7 days later to find out who is this that has come,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we all know that there's a soul inside of the body. In scriptures, it says that God placed something of himself in the human body. And so the thing is, as we look at this, they come together 7 days later and they find out who is this that has come. My name is Yusef Idris Fahadil Abdus Salam. That name means God will increase the teacher with justice and peace. And so I didn't find this out until I went to prison, by the way. I mean, my mother used to always say Yusef means Joseph and baby born with hair on his head. you know. But, when I was in prison, I'm trying to figure out because I was hit with a philosophical question. And that philosophical question was, who are you? And I'm thinking maybe this person was under a rock. I mean, my name is Yusef Salaam. I'm the guy who was falsely accused of raping the Central Park jogger. And he said, no, I didn't ask you that. I know who you are, but I've been watching you. You're not supposed to be here. You're not a criminal. Why are you here? Dig inside yourself and try to understand what is it about you that you're supposed to do by taking you through this process. And so here I was now looking at myself and understanding that I was just like a uh, what's the thing before the butterfly, the inchworm.
Yeah, inchworm in the cocoon.
In the
Okay.
cocoon.
Yeah.
So I was that, and I was placed into this place that was supposed to be a damned place, and it was. It was a damned place. Prison is a damned place, right? But prison for me was cool and safe. It was almost like scripture where you read that they threw Abraham in the fire, but they forgot the owner of the heat. And so the owner of the heat said, don't burn him. So Abraham was said to have been in the fire, hanging out, relaxing, just waiting, preparing. And when Abraham came out of the fire, he came out unscathed. Now, I'm not saying that that same thing happened to me, but I was in this place and I was able to utilize the opportunities that were being presented to me to get a college education, to read books and read broadly, to delve into spirituality in a way that I had never and would probably never be able to delve into spirituality to get a foundation of what it is. So I can talk to people from the Christian faith and they may come up to me and say, man, you a Christian? I said, no, man, but I read your books and I know and I understand. I've been able to take anything and everything and process it so that I can share with another individual as opposed to be against that individual and not lose myself in the process. You know, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your book.
Yes.
Let's talk about you're self-published. You're independent. I mean, is that right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes, yes. So the independent is the way to go. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I'm gonna tell you the flip side. Like a lot of people want to get published and they want the big publishing house to come and help them. But I'm gonna tell you, the story of Master P is a story I will never forget. This man became a millionaire selling his own tape, his mixtape, out of the trunk of his car. Now, of course, I'm already in a financial position that's different than a lot of folks. So this was really a labor of love. This was really me saying, you know what? This historical document that I'm going to put in a book So now it's going to be a whole piece of things that people are going to be able to read, they're going to be able to understand, they're going to be able to see things that I have said when I was on trial, when they sentenced us. There's a poem in the book called I Stand Accused. When they sentenced us, I was able to stand up and say these last few words before they threw the book at me. And then all along throughout the prison process, making sure that I didn't turn into an animal, making sure that prison, I was doing the time and I didn't let time do me. I was taking this thing and turning it into something different than what it was supposed to be for me. It was almost like alchemy, understanding that there's a greater thing that I can do. I can come out of this place either a bitter person or a far better person. And so I was able to take that and use that and understand that through planning, through organizing, what's my tomorrow going to look like? I don't know if I'm going to survive today, but if I do survive, what's my tomorrow going to look like? Am I going to be able to talk about this case? Am I going to be able to share my experiences in a way that's compelling? Am I going to be able to move past this and not be stuck in just the Central Park jogger case? You know, and in many ways, what the book has allowed me to do is to almost transcend the experience in a beautiful way, to be able to share the experience, and people look at me and say, wow, this guy is not bitter, he's not angry. But I've taken what Dr. Maya Angelou said, in that she said, you should not be bitter. You should not be bitter. You could be angry, but don't be bitter, because being bitter is like a cancer. It eats upon you. It doesn't do anything to what you're angry at. And so if you look at the anger part, take that anger and use it, change it, bend it, right? How do you bend it? Create masterful dance pieces, create masterful drum pieces, vote your way into a better reality, march your way into a better reality, speak your way into a better reality. And so all of that stuff are things that I've been trying to do, especially with the speaking part, because I started my own company called Yusef Speaks, where I'm looking at my experiences and trying to share with people in the criminal justice world. I'm trying to share with the people in the elementary schools all the way up through college, to share with them not only the story of the Central Park jogger case, but through trying times. If I was able to get a college degree in prison, being out of prison should be a breeze. It should be a breeze. I know a lot of times it's not, and it doesn't seem like it is. But at least when you go through that process and you look back, it'll all make sense.
It all makes sense. Okay, your social media contacts, let them know where they can reach you, where they can purchase your book, and how they can just contact you and speak with you.
Absolutely. So I usually tell folks, if you want to contact me, be mindful, because email and messaging me on social media is a nightmare. I got 6,000 emails, literally 6,000 emails that I have not looked at yet through my personal and business email accounts. But I tell people, look, you can follow me on social media. I have an Instagram account, a Facebook account, a Twitter account, a Tumblr account. Almost every social media that's out there I have, even Snapchat. I don't know how to use Snapchat yet, but I got a Snapchat, and people follow me. One day I'm gonna figure it out. My daughters and my sons are gonna be able to show me some stuff about how to use it. But I also have a website which allows people to be able to interact with not only the book but other products that I'm beginning to release to the public. They can find the book online at yusefspeaks.com. That's YUSEFSPEAKS.com. They can search for the book there. I have a store that's going to be up and running within a few weeks. You can reach out to me, and if you see me, because I travel around a lot. A lot of times, if you see me and I'm in your town or in your state, come and hang out. You know, I usually have books with me and other materials with me that I readily share with the public. So that's the way to get at me.
Okay, so we're gonna leave it there. Don't forget he has T-shirts and hats too.
Yes,
I have to throw that in there, master marketer here. Okay, here we go. So I like to, oh, I'd like to thank Yusef Salaam for speaking with us today. This is an extensive one. This is like 35 minutes long, y'all. I'm looking at the time. Incredible, great information. Stay tuned. The Black Ice Chronicles Bomb Squad radio massive.